You know, I had the great good luck to grow up in Medford, Oregon. I think it's probably the most idyllic place a kid could have grown up at the time that I did, and I was just lucky.
He and I shared a bedroom, so we were very close as brothers. We'd lie there talking in bed or secretly reading when we were supposed to be asleep or listening to the Green Hornet on the radio.
I had a loving set of parents. My mom and my dad were very civically involved. They really believed in education. They believed in the community. And my two brothers and sister and I were all close and grew up together in I think what was a loving and really inspiring environment. I had teachers who believed in telling every youngster that he or she had full potential. They gave us a sense that we really could go any place, do anything. I didn't know where it was until I applied to it. It was academically challenging, but again a sense that my high school education had actually prepared me to be academically competitive with some of the best prepared kids in the country, actually in the world.
We have to go back to his career in Sports Illustrated. You probably don't know about that, but he played in the Harvard band when he was at Harvard, and the Harvard band had a 2-page spread in Sports Illustrated, so he's the only member of the family that's been in Sports Illustrated.
I was very fortunate to have been awarded a Rhodes Scholarship. That gave me a chance to spend 2 years at Oxford during actually a very key time in the world's history. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the Berlin Crisis happened all during that time. The assassination of John F. Kennedy happened back home. Things were changing. They were turbulent in the world. I think fairly early in my life, public service was a calling of some kind, and law certainly seemed to be one of the professional degrees that you could get that would be of great benefit, of utility in being a lawmaker. So I'm sure that played into the equation of ultimately deciding that law would be my professional calling.
It was sort of an arranged marriage, basically. My parents met David's parents at a restaurant in Ashland, and they compared notes, as parents always do. What are your kids doing? What are your kids doing? And they realized that they had these two aging, spinster-type children living in the same city with no hopes, no prospects ever to be married. And so the next thing I know, I think my father probably wrote David a letter begging him to ask me out and probably sent him $20. It wouldn't have been more than that, knowing my dad, to take me out for dinner. And so that's how I met David.
The long and short of it is, Lynn and I swallowed hard. We had one young baby, Kirsten, and another one that Lynn was expecting, but maybe youth and daring got the better of our judgment. We decided to run in 1974, and I knocked on 9,000 doors and wore out 3 pairs of shoes, got 2 dog bites, and I think probably to most people's surprise, I got elected. So I found it a very creative time. It was very rewarding to serve in the Oregon legislature, and I'll always treasure the understanding actually of Oregon that it gave me. My dad said to me at one point, you know, you don't want to be an old sock in a comfortable shoe, which was a good way of saying it's time to make a decision. And here's that Attorney General's office. It's actually sitting at that intersection between politics, public policy, and law. When I was Attorney General, it was really, in some ways, very easy. You know, the law and the Constitution are going to be our guide, and we'll make tough calls, and people may not like it, but we have an anchor and a sail. And it is what our fundamental law, our guiding principles tell us to do.
That is right, because I consider sense of...
Maybe one of the most important take-homes that I feel actually very good about, and that Oregonians should, is that very easily the tent situation in Rajneeshpuram could have been a Ruby Ridge. It could have been a Waco. They had more firepower than the Portland Police Bureau. They poisoned 750 people with salmonella bacteria in the Dalles. They attempted murder.
Not only did he deal with the Rajneesh and the death threats personally against him that they perpetrated, but his record before the U.S. Supreme Court is unassailed. I think that he's 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 victories, something like that. And he was, again, a very cerebral Attorney General. He didn't play to the stands. He played to the best of the law.
In 1983, Kirsten suddenly got sick. She had a high fever. She was very lethargic. We weren't that worried initially at all. Kids get sick, and they get over being sick. But the doctor, of course, wanted to run a blood test, and he was absolutely alarmed by her blood counts. At that time, we had no idea that this was Fanconi anemia. But we were to learn over time, over a period of years really, that of our 5 children, all 3 of our daughters were born with Fanconi anemia. You know, we spent a couple of years being, I think, quite depressed about it, not knowing quite what to do, and then realized that that wasn't going to be a good solution, to do nothing. And then we started the support group, and then we started the research fund. And it's very energizing to see that your efforts can produce such an incredible outcome.
They were the ones who started the bone marrow registry, who started the Fanconi Anemia Research Foundation, who raised most of the money for it, who got together the Fanconi families so that they could support each other. All of those things were critical, not just for the healing process for themselves, although I don't think you ever get over the death of a child, but to make sure that they were doing something for other people. And the Fanconi Anemia Research Foundation has done some remarkable things, not just for Fanconi, but some of their findings have had significant effects on the research for breast cancer, for example. So there are a lot of silver linings on what is a very dark cloud.
Good evening, I'm Shirley Hancock.
And I'm Mike Donahue. It looks like Oregonians will get to see that political prize fight of the decade. 2 heavyweights slugging it out for governor. Dave Frohnmayer threw his hat in the ring today.
When 1990 was approaching, you know, I sensed a set of directions that Oregon might go, and I thought I could be part of it. I think the history has been pretty well written on that. I didn't run a very good campaign as far as I'm concerned personally, and there was a third-party candidate, unexpected, came out of the blue pretty easily, that capitalized on divisions within my own political party. And Barbara Roberts ran a very astute campaign, and so that didn't turn out to be a win.
It was a dismal term for Barbara Roberts because she was dealing then with all of the cutbacks that Oregon had to suffer after Proposition 5. So in a lot of ways, I think it launched Dave into his academic career. I mean, he'd already been in academia, obviously, but into his career as a university president, which I think, if I could gauge it, was the most satisfying segment of his public career.
Dave was in charge of trying to fill that position when Miles left. And the board took a look, did not see that there was any choice that it had but to appoint Dave Frohnmayer. Why? Because Dave had instant credibility with the faculty. He'd been one of them before he'd been dean. He had instant credibility around the state because he'd been Attorney General, and had also, because of his family connections, was well known to be rooted in Oregon, in one of the most prominent families in Southern Oregon and maybe in the entire state.
I loved the place. My first job right after Lynn and I were married was as a law professor and assistant to the president of the university way back in the 1970s. So I knew the university, and as it turns out, I didn't know this, but the university archivist told me I was the first native-born Oregonian to be the president of any major university in Oregon. So for whatever that's worth in the Book of Archives, it nonetheless was, I think, a huge advantage.
We were the only state in the Union where the state did not put money into building academic buildings in the early 1990s. The only place in the country. What we were able to do in Oregon, and Dave was one of the leaders of this, is to convince the legislature that if we raised private money to supplement state money, that the state would put maybe a third, maybe a half of the money into an academic building.
I think in Dave's case, you can look at the raw numbers. It's $500 million worth of work and growing, maybe another $200 million, so it's a huge amount of work. Projects like the Art Museum, projects like the School of Music, the College of Education, the theater, these are projects that are hard to raise money for. Nobody in those professions has a lot of money to give, yet Dave was able to go out and raise money for these really generational changes at the campus. It was fabulous.
One of the things that he told me while he was there was that he benefited from the fact that many of the donors thought he was Republican. And he is perhaps in name only, but there you are. I mean, a person who is really accessible to everybody.
Making choices is, after all, the responsibility of a decision maker, of a leader. And if you're always going to have your finger in the wind, you're just going to blow with what already is past tense.
I think he is focused on greater purpose than his own. And you can see that in the way that he is the quintessential Oregonian. And he believes in this state, he believes in the people of this state, he believes in the future of this state. You can say that. A lot of people say they do. He actually, I mean, you can sense it at his core. That animates him.
If you're looking for vindication in tomorrow's editorial or letter to the editor, that's hit and miss. But if you say, you know, we're building for something that's got to last beyond our lifetime, so what contributes best to that building process? Then that's the guide for conscience and decisions. Now, I hope I always use that as the pole star. Probably have, as all humans do, fall short any number of times. But I think people understand and understood that our values were very deep. The belief that higher education is something beyond oneself and extends beyond one's lifetime, and it is for the greater social good. That's a powerful value. That's a powerful motivating value. And if people see that whatever mistakes of the day you make, that's your underlying commitment, I think they'll cut you slack. And I think they did.